Now we're going to get down to the nitty-gritty of what Indians are all about.
I still say we Indian people are believers in the truth. This is the way of life that was given to your people. You're born an Indian, you're going to die an Indian. Indianness is a good life. You're facing an Indian this afternoon.
This program has been made possible in part with financial assistance from the State Arts Council of Oklahoma and by a grant from the Oklahoma Foundation for the Humanities. For further information on this and other humanities programs, contact the Oklahoma Foundation for the Humanities, 2809 Northwest Expressway, Oklahoma City, 73112. Or telephone 405-840-1721.
Artist, sculptor, husband, father. Jerome Tiger was not one to conform to the expectations of others. Rather, he would set precedents for others to follow and admire. Perhaps Jerome's unique sense of style and color is what brought him to the forefront of the Indian art world.
Most Indians, used bright, garish colors. That was the Indian way of doing art. And Jerome started this muted color, this soft shade, this delicate shade. And of course, everybody tried to copy him.
It was Independence Day, 1941. Fireworks lit up the sky, and excitement filled the air as John and Lucinda Tiger anxiously awaited the birth of their baby. 4 days later, on July 8th, Jerome Richard Tiger was born. Jerome spent the first 10 years of his life with his family on the campgrounds of the West Eufaula Indian Baptist Church. His mother and father had 5 children. The Tiger children were greatly influenced by their grandfather, Coleman Lewis. Coleman was a full-blood Creek Indian who was well known and respected among his people. At the age of 26, Coleman converted to Christianity and became a Baptist missionary to the Creeks. He and his wife Hetty were heavily involved at the West Eufaula Indian Baptist Church. Jerome's grandfather provided him with a wealth of knowledge, from which he gleaned many ideas for his artwork in the years to come. Jerome's interest in art was recognized while he was yet a boy. He would draw the subjects which surrounded him, and often sketched on homework assignments, textbooks, and notebooks. Becoming the 46th State was drawn in colored pencil on craft paper, which he did in lieu of a final test in his Oklahoma history class. It depicted the marriage of a cowboy to an Indian maiden, representing the union of Oklahoma and Indian territories in 1907. During his high school years, Jerome continued to draw and sketch, but he became intolerant of school and decided the Navy would be an acceptable alternative. Dropping out of school, he enlisted at the age of 17 to serve his 2-year duty. Not long after returning from service, Jerome met and married Peggy Richmond.
I was 18 years old, and he was 19. He was the most exciting person that I have met to date. And so here was Jerome with all this charisma. He was good-looking. He was fun to be with. He was steady. He was talented. He was kind. He was compassionate. He didn't have to put on a macho show because he was self-confident.
Peggy and Jerome Tiger lived what she calls a fairy tale existence. When Dana, their first child, was only 2, Jerome was given a scholarship by the Bureau of Indian Affairs to attend the Cooper School of Art in Cleveland, Ohio. While there, he had his first one-man show back in Muskogee, Oklahoma. It was a sellout and would lead to numerous others. People expressed great interest in the paintings he did of his culture. He was often encouraged to develop his Indian art by a woman named Nettie Wheeler, who had complete confidence in the young Indian artist.
You see, he was an Indian artist and used Indian material from his own background. The Trail of Tears, for example, which is something that is still very much on the mind of his people today. It's a subject that's really fixed in time and place as a page of the history of the 5 civilized tribes. But he chose to render it as a universal and timeless statement. Much of what he did was really metaphors of the human condition. Sadness, sense of loss, alienation, despair, anxiety, and the public really reacted as I've never seen them react to any artist before. Because it's kind of rare to be able to put such feeling and such emotion and yet do it with such good taste and such purity. He was certainly a unique and remarkable artist, possibly the finest Oklahoma Indian artist that Oklahoma produced, for a number of reasons. First of all, technically speaking, he was a virtuoso, and no one has yet come close to his technical ability. So you have on the one hand his technical expertise, and then he had the spiritual content in his work, which was outstanding. He could handle the grandest themes with such good taste, restraint, and sincerity. So he could imbue his works with a great deal of very genuine feeling and emotion. And there isn't anyone else that came close to that.
Jerome Tiger took the passions of his people and translated them into remarkable pieces of art. 2 of his most significant subjects were the traditional stomp dance and the stickball game. It was Jerome's grandfather, Coleman, who inspired his depictions of the stomp dance, for he was at one time a leader in the traditional Native American ceremony. The stomp dance is a part of the renewal ritual called the Green Corn Festival. It is a time to gather with many others from the tribe for both social and religious purposes.
There's something you're not supposed to drink beer there, but we always had to sneak it in. But it was fun. I mean, we had a good time, all the time, but we had fun too. When they'd catch us with beer, they'd chase us. See, there's a bunch of them with flashlights. There's a fence there, barbed wire fence. Well, I was running like that, and I hit, next thing I knew, I was in the air, and I did a complete somersault and landed on my feet. I couldn't believe it, and I just kept going. Well, I had tore my pants up and everything. See, that was fun those days.
Jerome enjoyed life, and he painted with intensity, guided by his own demanding standards.
But somehow, when he painted, he just didn't allow mistakes. He would throw it aside and do another, because somehow, and of course each artist has their own individual way that they grow, and Jerome's way was just constantly sketching, but he had to have kind of a looseness and kind of a naturalness in it. He never overworked anything. Sometimes that's a problem with an artist. Well, Jerome definitely never overworked anything, but he always had to do it with ease.
One piece which expresses this ease and naturalness is Stomp Dance Leader in Action. It captures the essence of the moment. In Dances Around the Fire, Jerome accentuates the importance of the eternal flame in the Indians' religious experience. Jerome was able to accurately portray these rituals because of his own involvement with them.
He would go to stomp dances and stickball games. That was part of his culture and part of his life and very interesting to him. So he did do a lot of stickball. He liked athletics, and that was his Native American athletic event.
Originally, the stickball game was called by the Creeks the little brother to war. It was, in effect, kind of a sublimation for aggressive tendencies. And there were people, different clans, different towns would let out steam and compete with each other. And it had religious overtones also. In contemporary times, it was certainly a safety valve for all kinds of tensions and grudges. So you have that aspect, and he painted that aspect very well, showing the catharsis of violent action. But at the same time, he appreciated the beauty and the grace of the game. A well-known piece, the Mighty Stickball, for example. The stickball player soars like a ballet dancer. So there he emphasized the grace and beauty of the movement. But he also did many sketches and vignettes of home life. People around the camps, around the dances, putting on shoes, tending babies, cooking, gossiping. And they're done with supreme skill, and the affection and regard that he had for these customs and for his people is self-evident. They're really very warm-hearted and lovely things.
Though Jerome's heritage was Creek Seminole, his artwork encompassed all Native Americans, especially highlighting the 5 civilized tribes: Cherokee, Creek, Choctaw, Chickasaw, and Seminole. The many stories he had heard about his ancestors influenced the subjects of his paintings.
You see all the snow coming down, and you think, I wonder how he does that. And he told us that he took his paintbrush and just flecked it, and those little drops would drop around and look just like snow. And it looked like it was coming down. When you'd see it, you could almost see it move. And you could see the wind blowing everybody around. People were so amazed at the action in the picture. It was beautifully done.
He worked furiously at top speed, and yet there was no way that you could tell that by looking at his work. So meticulous, so precise, as if he pored forever over it. Also, although he was very economical in how he portrayed things, not putting in details that were unnecessary to carry out the message or the feeling, the mood. Where he thought detail was appropriate, the detail was amazing.
Though Jerome was versatile in his art forms and tools, he always went back to using tempera paint. His Seminole paintings were done in this medium.
I love observing the enemy. I think that's particularly beautiful piece because it's so peaceful. I mean, a man standing there and you see every vein in his hand and he's just pulling the reeds gently aside. And it's just like before something happens and you don't know what's going to happen, but he does look like he's so at peace with himself. And then I think it's just a marvelous, the intricacies of the headdress on that man. I mean, the legs are a mere suggestion on that piece. You know, he's not going to have you look at the legs. He's going to have you focus right in here. And so I love that piece. That's one of my favorites, but I have others.
Besides being a gifted artist, Jerome Tiger was a devoted father and husband.
He was able to spend so much more time with his children being an artist home than most fathers or most men would at that time. And he didn't mind doing that. He was perfectly happy to be the one seated at the table with a child on his knee and a messy little hand in his plate. He would want me to stay up as late as I could when he painted. And so he'd say, well, stay up and talk to me while I paint. And now, he didn't require much sleep. I think he slept less than maybe any human that I've ever known.
And I'd crawl all over him while he was painting. And I'd throw things through the air, and I'd splash paint all over his paintings. And he could make paintings look like whatever happened was meant to be there. So anything that he started painting, he would, it would, as a finished product, be perfect no matter what went on. He was a great father because he and my mom got along so well, and he liked to entertain her, and she liked to be entertained, so they had a wonderful life because a lot of the things that he lived for was so that they could have a good time together and everything would be fun.
We weren't used to all the excitement and the great big nice museums like Philbrook and Gilcrease and the one-man shows in such places, and so we were like kids, just like being allowed to dress up and stay up and go to someone else's party, and so we had fun. While he would sometimes paint day and night for 3 days, to him it was not work, and he considered himself the most fortunate human being to, as he would say, not have to work and be able to make a living.
Jerome dedicated his time, talent, and his energy to live life to its fullest, doing what he loved to do. His artwork traveled nationwide. He held one-man shows in Arkansas, North Carolina, and throughout Oklahoma. Exhibitions which included his work could be found in Washington, D.C., New Mexico, Wyoming, New York, Illinois, and California. Awards and honors had his name inscribed, and Jerome's popularity spread at an amazing speed. Then, on August 13, 1967, at age 26, it all came to an end. It was a night like any other night, as Jerome's brother Johnny described it. Jerome walked into the familiar pool hall in Eufaula after dropping daughter Lisa off at his parents'. Jerome and his buddies played some pool, drank a little, and then drove to the lake to join a party. Jerome shot beer cans with his gun while others stood and watched. Everyone had a good time. Jerome left the party that night with Johnny and a few friends. They drove home in a friend's car. As the car pulled to a stop, Jerome put one foot out and scooted to the door.
Something hit me on the shoulder. I thought it was him tapping on me. It was his head. His head banging. But I thought I heard, it wasn't a loud noise. I just heard something go, boom, boom. And so I said, all right, let's go then. Let's go. Well, I'm ready. That was when it happened. He was getting out, I think, and just when he's scooting, because one foot was out the door, and his arm had laid down between his legs, and his head fell this way. So that's how it happened.
Daddy had Lisa with him that night. He took that he died. He told Mom that he'd be back by morning, and he took Lisa with him to visit his parents, that were in Eufaula. So she was in Eufaula the night he was killed, and I was with Mom, and Chris was with Mom, of course, because he's just 2 weeks.
The night that he died, he took me down to the camp house where I was staying with my grandma, And my grandma tells me that about the time that he died, I was real close to him all the time, but about the time that he died, I jumped up out of bed and started screaming, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy," and ran to the door and was trying to get out. And that was about the same time that he passed away.
He seemed so invincible. You never would think that something like that could happen. You know, I wouldn't have then. Now I know just anything can happen.
Jerome's tragic and untimely accidental death left a 24-year-old Peggy to raise a young family of 3. Dana was 5, Lisa 2, and Chris only 2 weeks old.
Jerome had a vision like he was going to go 2 weeks before he died. And I said, don't talk like that. And I told him not to talk like that. But I don't know, he had a vision like that. We were sitting at his house. He said, take care of the kids. When he died, he was doing a lot of spiritual things. But I noticed it myself. I said, why are you doing, why are you painting that spirit stuff, He didn't have no explanation. He said, he just thought see, well, that's what they always, focused on, the old ones, a long time ago.
War to peace, death to life is one of those really ambitious spiritual subjects that most artists would not dare to tackle because you can't get away with it. But he did. He could handle the most sublime, the most spiritual, the deepest philosophic concept having to do with man's place in the universe, and do it with such purity, such restraint, that it would touch the heart. And of course, we all yearn for peace. And here's this magnificent composition, this concept of somehow, after all the killing and all the strife, with his hopeful note that eventually man will reach out to God and accept the gift of peace. One of my favorites is something called The Travelers, for example. 3 Indians, horsemen, coming from nowhere, going nowhere, in an alien, empty landscape. That's absolutely a metaphor, because traveling, ever since the year 1, has really meant traveling to journey through life. One of his greatest burial scenes is very sketchy, which is very typical. Short on the details, because they're not important. He's trying to convey the sense of loss, the sadness, the loneliness. You're looking into the future, a veil, smoky, misty. It is fully and completely emotion. And it's an art that transcends the narrow definition of Indian art. It is great art.
Jerome often left detail out in order to focus attention on what he thought was important. Many of his pieces were exquisitely complex and diverse, both qualities found within Jerome's own personality.
When they put together in 1967 the Four Moons Ballet with the 4 prima ballerinas from Oklahoma and Ballard, the Native American composer, and all this was put together, brought together. Then they asked Jerome to do the cover. And they said, please come to the rehearsal so that you can see the ballerinas. And he said, I don't need to see the ballerinas. I have to do this myself. Well, he did it, and it's just an absolutely magnificent painting. And the ballerinas liked it so well that was the pose they were in when they began the ballet, Jerome's pose.
Although Jerome handled a certain number of subjects many times, such as variations on the theme Trail of Tears, and mothers and children and stickball scenes. He didn't follow any set formula. He didn't copy himself. It was always a new interpretation, always compositionally different, and often a different mood, a different aspect. Sometimes death would be kind of an apotheosis. Sometimes it might even be with a hopeful note, there is no death, or a last journey could actually be going to a better world. So he was very many-sided and genuine, and every painting was something new, was an original creation. He was not a formula painter.
At one point in his life, Jerome tried a new medium, clay. He tried many times to produce a sculpture he liked, but to no avail. These earlier pieces turned into target practice when Jerome's frustration got the best of him. He figured since they weren't to his liking, they could at least be used for something. A few of his small sculptures remain, now owned by private collectors. However, his most acclaimed piece is of the stickball player. It has been bronzed and is a prominent figure at the Five Civilized Tribes Museum in Muskogee, Oklahoma.
He was killed before he got the hands finished, or the stickballs in it. But it was used anyhow here without it to show, and people came from all over, every place. That was one of the drawing cards of this museum, was that stickball player.
Peggy Tiger recognized the genius in her late husband's works. She knew he had a message to share with all the world. She could not be satisfied leaving that message untold. Determined to make Jerome's legacy carry on, Peggy and her cousin Molly established a company run by M.A. Babcock, a fictitious man sitting at the helm of the company. Peggy would then call the dealers, pretending to be a secretary, and Molly would be the saleswoman. Peggy and Molly were successful in their goal. Their dedication to such an endeavor has kept Jerome's artwork even to this day at the forefront of Indian art. Although his life was brief, Jerome's contribution to the arts and to all people is timeless. Jerome Tiger, the man and his legacy.